everybody. Welcome in to the Thanksgiving edition of Biscuits and SEC Live. Thank you for tuning in. I am Hank, a.k.a. Hammer, joined by my brother Alex, a.k.a. the boss man of this outfit. We got a busy week, a busy show ahead. We've got a lot to recap from week 13 with all the upsets that we saw, as well as some college football playoff talk, SEC title talk, and rivalry week. We're finally here. Feels kind of weird to be in the final week of the regular season, but here we are. Still plenty of football ahead. How you doing? How you doing today, boss man? How are we feeling? Excited for a show?
Yeah, I'm excited to get through it. If you guys can hear, I've got strep throat for the third time in 2 months, so it's been a little bit of a rough go. So I'm going to try and make it through. This is the last time I didn't make it to my Jordan flu game, but this time I did. Right here, I've got my Jordan book, and I am playing in my Michael Jordan game right here. So as you can see there, this is my Jordan game. We're going to get it done. Podcasting never stops, especially on Thanksgiving week. So excited to get into it. We've got a lot to talk about.
That we do. I'm on a road game for me. I'm in Colorado with my girlfriend's family. So as you can see, my background is different. My nose is a little red. I was just on a walk. It's about 30 degrees outside. So everybody's battling through stuff to get this show to you. And we're excited to do that. So before we hop into it, you can see below Biscuits and SEC newsletter. We send that out twice a week, Monday, Friday during the season. We hope that you will subscribe to that. It's free, of course. And we also post stuff on our blog, biscuitsandsec.com, throughout the week as well, if you like to follow along with the written word. Of course, follow us on our social channels at Biscuits and SEC. You can see below my name there. And we're glad you're here. So week 13 recap, pretty crazy. There's going to be some games I don't think we're going to actually discuss on the show. However, some of the bigger matchups we will certainly dive into. So first one was the noon game out of Gainesville, Florida 24, number 9, Ole Miss 17. I think effectively ending the Rebels' playoff chances. They sit at 14 now. We can get into that later. So maybe like the Monty Python guy, they're not dead yet. It's just a flesh wound. But sitting at 8-3 now, Ole Miss, really, really tough loss for the Rebels. What are your takeaways from that game?
Yeah, first of all, if folks do want to check out our recaps on the Texas, Kentucky, and Mizzou, Mississippi State games, they can go to biscuitsandsec.com. We do recaps every week. So if you want a little bit more in depth and some other thoughts that we have on those games from last week and recaps throughout the year, you can go check those out at biscuitsandsec.com. So my takeaways from this game were DJ Lagway is the truth. That's first and foremost. I mean, this kid, he's playing on one leg. And he goes out there and, he doesn't have an amazing game, but he plays good enough to beat, an Ole Miss team who was looking at the playoff. They really had their eyes set on that. And as you said in your recap on biscuitsandsec.com, all you had to do was beat a 5-5 Florida team and a, 2 and whatever or 1 and whatever Mississippi State team in order to get to the playoff or have a real serious shot at getting in. And you couldn't do that. So Lane Whiffen, as some folks like to call him, seems like he's back. My question really coming out of this game, well, first of all, my other thing that I took away from this game is that I expected the Ole Miss defensive line to outplay the Florida defensive line. And if you look at the statistics, it was really the opposite. The Florida defensive line played extremely well. I think they had like 9 tackles for loss, a couple of sacks, and over on the other side, you only had one sack and 4 tackles for loss from the Ole Miss side. And with DJ Lagway playing on one leg, I just expected to see more from that Ole Miss defensive line. And especially, 2 of those tackles for losses were on key 4th downs inside the red zone, which Lane Kiffin decided to go for it instead of taking the points, which cost them at a minimum 6 points, maybe more. So those were those were big calls in that game. That was one of the big things I took away. And then coming out of this game, it's really, if not now, when for Ole Miss? You could have asked that question before this game, and now you can ask it after. When are they going to be able to do it? If they couldn't do it with this team, with Lane Kiffin, with all the money they invested into this team, with all the talent they had with this team, when are they going to be able to do it? And I know they're excited about Austin Simmons. I am too. That kid looks really, really good. But this year was the year, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm with you on the, if not now, when. I think looking at Ole Miss's schedule heading into the year with the dissolution of the, divisions within the SEC, right? They had a pretty favorable schedule. You looked at it and you thought, okay, and we can pull it up here, right? But we thought, okay, they play Georgia, but it's at home. They go on the road to South Carolina. They go at LSU. For the most part, a lot of people, which turned out to be incorrectly, but kind of assumed it was a 2-game schedule, right? Ole Miss last year had won 10 games. They were a very good team. And coming into this year, it's like, all right, we got Georgia and we got LSU. And honestly, 10-2 probably gets you to the playoff was kind of the mindset. So Ole Miss goes all in the transfer portal. Everything is lined up for a run. And they kind of flipped, right? Last year, Ole Miss beat the teams they were supposed to beat, loses to Georgia, loses to Alabama. Well, this year, they beat Georgia handily at home, and then they just stubbed their toe and have 3 really, really bad losses. I mean, the LSU game I won't really consider a bad loss. I mean, it is an overtime game at night in Death Valley, but Kentucky and Florida were not very good losses. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's one of those things. Obviously, if you're Ole Miss, you keep swinging. I don't think they need to, give up on that plan. I just think it didn't work out this year, and that's a tough pill to swallow. And that's college football. It's hard to win. It's hard to win in the SEC, and they didn't get the job done this year. And it's going to sting for Kiffin and that program, I'm sure, for a long time. And before we move on, just on the actual game and not big picture Ole Miss, I think our buddy Stephen Willis from Locked On Ole Miss was mentioning this going into the game and then certainly after the game. Lane has to start coaching like he has the better team. Those 4th downs inside the red zone, you don't have to do that when you have the better team. That is something that a pesky underdog does to get a couple extra points or keep a possession alive. When you're the better team, just play straight up, man. I mean, you don't need to be handing the ball off to your defensive tackle 6 times. Pegues got 6 carries. What are we doing, right? And, part of that, I think, again, is the running back position has been an issue at Ole Miss, and the Pegues stuff has been working up until that game. But it doesn't feel like if you are a big dog, right? I mean, look around the country. What big dog? Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, Michigan, whoever, Georgia, they're not handing the ball off to their defensive tackle 6 times a game. And they're not handing the ball off to their defensive tackle on 4th down because they can beat you straight up and they don't have to do gimmicks like that. So I think it's a learning experience this year for Lane in those games that they ended up losing. And then on the Florida side, look, good win. Napier saved his job. He's got momentum there. Lagway seems to be the truth. So impressive stuff.
Yeah, not only does Florida have momentum, but just look on the recruiting trail. Recruits are taking notice. They are flipping kids from Florida State. Billy Napier's hot on the recruiting trail right now. Players took notice of that. Not only that, but they're taking notice of DJ Lagway. This is some people are just leaders. They're just born leaders, and people just gravitate towards them. And you're seeing that. DJ Lagway, it seems like not only can this kid play, but he's also a really serious leader who can galvanize a locker room and can galvanize a program. And it looks like that's what's happening now here with Florida.
I agree. So we'll see what they do this weekend against Florida State. That will also not be a game that we actually break down because Florida State is hot garbage. So back to what we saw last week. Another giant upset. Again, Kentucky, Texas, Missouri, Mississippi State. We're not going to hit on those games. Feel free to read our thoughts on the blog. But Oklahoma 24, number 7, I believe at the time, Alabama 3. One of the more surprising results, I would say, of the entire season, not just because Oklahoma won the game. I think we've seen enough college football over the years and just this year to realize that there's going to be upsets, but 24-3 is not an outcome I saw coming at all. What did you think about what went down in Norman?
Well, it's kind of insane. Alabama's, this year, right? Alabama's schedule, we can pull it up real quick here. But Alabama's schedule, we can find it. Yeah, here it is. So Alabama's schedule, right? You've got, you've got the win against Georgia. You've got a solid win against South Carolina. You lose to Tennessee. You get a massive win against LSU. Just absolutely, skull crush those guys. And then you've got losses to Vanderbilt. You've got losses to one of the worst Oklahoma teams that we've seen in 30 years. You've got, a loss to Tennessee isn't a bad loss. Tennessee's, knocking on the door of the playoff. But I feel like we're missing a loss on here somewhere.
No, just three. Vandy, Tennessee, OU.
There it is. I was missing it. But anyway, so it's been such a roller coaster this year. Alabama, my point here is that Alabama has two of the craziest results that we've seen all season. You've got the Vanderbilt loss, which no one saw that coming. And while you could understand Oklahoma might get an upset here in a crazy game, yeah, losing like that, 24-3, even though it's on the road, was just completely mind-blowing, frankly. And, hey, I'll toot my own horn here. I was the only one on the SEC After Dark last week who gave Oklahoma even a shot in this game. And all I did was pick them to cover. Just because it was in Norman, I thought it was a decent matchup for Oklahoma, especially with their defense. Their defense doesn't give up a lot of rushing yards, and in this game they didn't. They only gave up 70 to Alabama. So people were forgetting that Oklahoma has a good defense. I couldn't believe how bad Jalen Milroe looked. Like, it's just the season for Alabama has gone as Jalen Milroe has gone. Right. And it has just been this, right? It has just been up and down, a crazy roller coaster. So for Alabama fans, I don't feel sorry for you. You've gotten 6 championships since Nick Saban's been there. Welcome to how the rest of college football feels. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is how almost every team across the country has had it for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, their entire history. For Alabama, it hasn't been that way in the Nick Saban era. Well, now maybe it is. We'll see. But that was my big thing was, hey, we're this far into the season. I'm just really surprised that Jalen Milroe looks like that. And Bama fans can cry about the refs. It was a terrible call. I'll give you that. But you're still losing this game. Maybe momentum swings, but I don't think it does. I think you're still losing this game, even if you get that call.
Yeah, hey, you're down 24-3, and they wipe a touchdown off the board. You're still down 14. I don't think that changed the outcome, but I agree with what you said there. With Alabama just going as Milroe goes. And I kind of, as a unbiased, viewer of the Alabama season, I put my hands up because I don't know what the issue is when he is not playing well, because when he's playing well, it looks so easy. It's just like, oh, of course, like he's such a good athlete. He's good enough passing the ball downfield. And of course, nobody could stop him running the ball because of how fast, powerful, and explosive he is. And then in games against mostly Tennessee and then now Oklahoma, he just couldn't run the ball at all. And, I'm not a smart enough X's and O's guy to know exactly what those defenses are doing to slow him down. But kudos to them, because Venables and that team had a plan. They executed it to perfection. They got a defensive touchdown, right, with the pick 6. They forced him into turnovers, bad throws, and he was just not comfortable all night. And I think that's a credit to the defense, and also, maybe a bit of an indictment on the Alabama staff and DeBoer, and just kind of like, where's your adjustment or something, right? I mean, to only score 3 points is pretty mind blowing. And look, I think I do want to own up to this. Oklahoma fans, feel free to clown me, because I didn't think Oklahoma had this in them. I believe last week I said we might see the stadium emptying out because it'd been a terrible year. Venables was kind of, in my opinion, on some shaky ground. Not that he was going to get fired, but just that things were not trending well for him. And I thought this being the home finale, I thought it was going to get out of hand and Alabama was going to run them out of the stadium. And I thought a lot of people would head for the exits early. And obviously I was totally wrong. The stadium and atmosphere was fantastic. They were in, Bama's heads, it seemed like. I mean, Bama did not handle the environment well, and they got a great win, and they stormed the field. And Jackson Arnold ran for like 130 yards after being, left for dead earlier in the season by Oklahoma, staff and fans like us. So really impressive win for Oklahoma to keep their season alive, right? I mean, we talk a lot in college football, especially now with the portal and NIL, teams that are on quit watch. And it takes a very good head coach, at least a good head coach in terms of the type of culture they've built. You talk about Venables on X's and O's or whatever, or results that he has not gotten, but it's clear that the culture there is good. They play hard for him. They're not going to quit on him. They're not going to quit on the team. And that's something that he should be commended for, as I think you could say the same about Billy Napier in those kind of situations. So great win for Oklahoma, and really just stunning performance by Alabama.
Absolutely. Two more things I'll say. First is credit to you for owning up to that. And
yes,
I think Oklahoma fans can respect that. They should.
It takes a big man. I am that big man.
And you are that big man. That's right. Yeah. So at least you're willing to own up to it. I did not do that, Oklahoma fans. I picked you guys against the spread. So I should have picked you straight up, but at least I picked you against the spread. But the other thing I'll say too, and one of the things I was talking about in the game last week, or leading up to it in our preview of this game, was that I didn't think that it matched up well for Alabama on the defensive line. This wasn't I said this a couple times. So this isn't the Alabama defenses of old. These aren't the Alabama defenses that we're used to. And so just watch out, right? Like Oklahoma's big weakness is along the offensive line. Everyone knows what their Achilles heel is, but I don't think that Alabama really has the players to exploit that this year.
Yeah.
They didn't. They had 1 sack and they had 4 tackles for loss in this game. And Jackson Arnold, he was extremely efficient. They only passed the ball 11 times, but he was 9 of 11 for like 70-something yards maybe. And they had 2 big plays on that. They had a 19-yard gain and they had a 16-yard gain. But other than that, they pounded the rock. They flipped the script. They did what Alabama does to teams. They pounded the rock down Alabama's throat. They went for 257 yards. They had 2 running backs over 100 yards on the night. So it was just really impressive, the game plan that Brent Venables had, and they executed to a T. And, I think what they expected in this game was to win like 24-20, right? And to get a pick. Like this was his game plan from the start. He didn't expect it to go 24-3 and for Jalen Milroe to just seemingly self-destruct.
I agree. I think it went better than they could have imagined, but it's clear the game plan, it's clear what the game plan was. That was to stop him running the ball, frustrate him in the passing game, check. And then on offense, we're going to run the damn ball. And we're going to run it with Jackson Arnold. We're going to run it with running backs because we can't pass block and we can't throw. We don't have any wideouts. We're just going to run the ball. And that's what they did. And very impressive. So enough about that game. Another team in Alabama got a big win, actually, in the opposite end of the spectrum, both in the SEC standings and in terms of wins and losses over the weekend, and that is the Auburn Tigers that took down Texas A&M in Jordan-Hare 43-41 in quadruple overtime. We can talk a little bit more about the overtime rules here in a bit, but in terms of this game, 2 things that I kind of took away and wanted to hit on before I bop it back over to you. First one, A&M keeps starting slow. They get down 14-0 to South Carolina. They get down 10-0 to LSU. They get down in this game 21-0. And frankly, the fact that they even got to overtime is impressive, right? I mean, you're down 21-0 at night in Jordan-Hare, and you claw your way back to push it to overtime, and we're actually leading late in the fourth quarter. Auburn needed to tie you. So I don't hate, the game or the game plan or the effort from the Aggie side. It's just, guy, you got to find a way to come out of the gates better than that. And I think if you're A&M, I mean, your defense probably is the unit that let you down the most. On the Auburn side, as an Aggie, I hate that I've been saying this all year, but all year, you and I, and we're not alone in this, basically anyone with eyeballs and watches Auburn football has been screaming at Hugh Freeze to give the ball to Jarquez Hunter. He hasn't been doing it all year except for 2 games. Kentucky, where Jarquez ran for over 200 yards, and he did it again Saturday night, and Hunter goes for 28 carries, 130 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and voila, Auburn wins a football game. So I hate that he did it against us, but it's about dang time that Hugh started giving Hunter the ball.
Yeah, no kidding. I heard somebody on the SEC Network earlier this week say that he's kind of like a Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson type of back.
That's what he looks like.
Is. Physically, like looking at him, watching that kid run, he is. And if Hugh Freeze would have given him the ball all year, maybe he'd have those type of numbers. Maybe we'd be talking about him in the Heisman conversation instead of GT out of Boise State. But you actually hit on one of my exact points that I wanted to make about this game is that, I've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, and I especially mentioned it in the South Carolina game because, hey, where were those like vaunted Elko second half adjustments? Mike Elko has made a career about it. Everybody talks about that guy. If something happens in the first half, don't you worry, because in the second half, the guy's going to lock it down like a vault. Well, that did not happen in the South Carolina game. Now, it happened pretty well in the Auburn game. They held them to 10 points in the second half. However, how about we get some first half adjustments? Like, how about we actually not start out in a 21-0 hole again? Yeah. Like that needs to stop. That is really starting to hurt A&M is these, we start out in a 21-0 hole on the road with a young quarterback, like having to dig our way out. And credit to Marcel Reed, he's dug him out both times.
Yeah,
he's gotten out of that hole and gotten them right back in the game. But that is not, you're not going to win games that way. So the fact that they came, and the other piece of it too is all Aggies will know, all Aggies who suffer from, not only do I have strep throat right now, I also have battered Aggie syndrome. And I know that all of my Aggie friends are also suffering from it because this is something that we've watched for years across multiple coaches where you have, a player like Peyton Thorne, right? And before the year, they thought that Peyton Thorne was going to look like he did against A&M. The Texas A&M defense is supposed to be really good, and they make Peyton Thorne look like a dadgum Heisman candidate. Yeah. He's got 300 yards passing, and he's flinging the ball all over the field in the first half, and he's finding all these different pockets. It's like, where did the A&M secondary – it's just like they just disappeared for a game. Yeah. And they did the same thing against Lenora Sellers in South Carolina. So it's just bizarre. It doesn't make any sense. But you have to credit Auburn. And, hey, Jordan Hare, difficult place to play. They do a great job. That Auburn family, the Auburn fan base, they come together. They never quit. It does not matter if that team is 2-9 or whether they're 9-2. They're always coming out, and they're going to support their team, and it's going to be a wild atmosphere in Jordan Hare, and it was. So the other part of it too, I would say 2 final things on it. Auburn gave the Aggies every chance to win. The Aggies were given a short field on terrible punts, on 3 to 4 drives. They had one at the end of the first half where they should have tried to get points. They didn't get points. They went 3 and out or something. Then you had 2 drives in the second half where you're like, okay, here you go. A&M's going to pressure. A&M's going to push. A&M's going to get some points here. You punch it in for a touchdown here. You got them on their heels. And they could not do it. Yet again, A&M, when it's time to become a great program, when it's time to take that next step, can't seize the moment, and they can't do it. And so I know Aggies are getting frustrated about it. Take a deep breath a little bit. It's Elko in year 1. So if they can seize the moment here in the next 2 to 3 years, great. But I'm also kind of sick of saying next year. You had the moment, seize the moment. They didn't do it. And then finally, the last thing I'll say here is that losing Le'Veon Moss for the Aggies really hurt them. I mean, I think they probably win this game if they have Le'Veon Moss in the lineup. The fact that they didn't really hurt them. And that's enough about the losers. Auburn played a fantastic game. They played their best game of the year. Credit to Hugh Freeze, for winning this one. It gives them a lot of momentum. They have some momentum on the recruiting trail again as well. So big win for Auburn.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we should probably keep this train moving along. So enough about last week. Let's get into some of our storylines from this week. So we're going to talk, college football playoff, SEC title. We'll dig in a little bit to the overtime stuff, and then potentially discuss whether a 3-loss team from the SEC could find their way into the playoff before we hop into rivalry week and break down some of the storylines for Thanksgiving weekend. So, yeah, without getting into it too much, SEC title game is finally clear. Now, I will credit myself again for this. I refused to read all of the tiebreaker stuff because I thought it would work itself out. And here we are. It has. So I saved myself and hopefully viewers out there like you quite a bit of reading because Georgia has clinched. They will be in Atlanta. Obviously, they're playing Georgia Tech this weekend, so not a conference game. Their position is set. On the other side, with Alabama and Ole Miss both falling, it's between Texas and Texas A&M now. So the winner of that game in Kyle Field on Saturday night will go to Atlanta, which, of course, only amplifies the stakes in that game to a level I can't even really comprehend. And we'll get to that later. But SEC title is very clear now. So we know exactly, we have 3 teams that could be in there. But much more clear now than it was in weeks past. And thankfully, we don't have to go through any sort of tiebreakers other than head-to-head. And I guess whatever, Georgia, however they got in. But the SEC said they're in, so I don't need to read into why. The college football playoff, we had the latest rankings out Tuesday night. So last night, Texas stayed at 3. Bama fell from 7 to 13, so just outside that top 12. Ole Miss fell from number 9 to 14. Georgia rose from 10 to 7. Tennessee from 11 to 8. And then A&M fell from 15 to 20. South Carolina rose up from 18 to 15. And Missouri is still hanging on at number 21. They jumped up 2 spots from 23. So as it stands now, there are 3 teams from the SEC currently in the committee's top 12. That's Texas, Georgia, Tennessee. Bama at 13 and Ole Miss at 14 are knocking on the door. And then South Carolina at 15, maybe, I guess. Never say never. And obviously A&M still controls their own destiny in theory, were they to beat Texas and then Georgia and earn an automatic bid as the SEC champion. Did you have any thoughts on the college football playoff rankings or potential, 3-loss teams from the SEC maybe getting in? Where's your head at here?
Well, first of all, I was a little surprised that Indiana dropped below SMU, frankly. I mean, SMU, I guess it really doesn't matter. You just flip-flop them, but SMU's here at 9, Indiana's at 10. I looked into SMU's loss. SMU lost to BYU.
Yep.
18-15. Okay. BYU's a decent team this year. Indiana's losses to Ohio State. So I don't think that those are equal losses. To me, Indiana should be the highest ranked 10-1 team, except for Miami, right? So I would put Indiana around maybe just 9, maybe just flip-flop them with SMU. Other than that, I mean, I do think that there's a real possibility that, an 8-3 SEC team gets in. It just seems like too that there could be some craziness and some shenanigans that happen with like the ACC title game and the Big 12 title game, where you get, I don't know if those conferences get 2 teams in. Do they? I mean, and then the same thing with so for instance, if in the ACC title game you have SMU beat Miami, do both of those teams get in? Does Miami get in at 10-2 over, say, a 9-3 Alabama team? Probably, but I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting, crazy quandary for the committee to figure out. So I could see it. I could see a 9-3 team getting in. I would be surprised.
Yeah, here's what I'll say on this. I would say, first of all, regardless, obviously, we are biased SEC fans, hence the name of our show, Biscuits and SEC. However, in my opinion, I don't think a 3-loss SEC team is worthy of a shot at the national title, right? If you lose 3 times in the regular season, I don't think you deserve a chance to play for a national title. However, the thing about the 12-team playoff is there have to be 12 teams that get in. So if a 9-3 team is deemed, more worthy, then they have to get in, whether I like it or not, or whether anybody else likes it or not. So that's kind of where I'm at with this is like, do I think in Ole Miss or Alabama should get in? No. I've watched enough football from those teams to know that even, at their best, maybe they could compete for a title, but they haven't been consistent enough. And I don't think a team like that should have the opportunity to compete for a title, but there has to be 12 teams that get in. So who are you putting in above them, right? I mean, you brought up some hypothetical scenarios. I don't even want to get to the conference title games because my hunch is the committee will not penalize teams for that just because it's bad for business, and a conference titles games would be essentially not worth even participating in at that point. So I don't think they will penalize teams. Like if you are in the top 12 and you lose your title game, I think most likely you will stay in the top 12. I guess we'll see. The committee, in my opinion, doesn't really have a set criteria at all. So we'll kind of see what they do. But I just look at this right now. I mean, Notre Dame goes to USC this weekend, and I don't think USC is very good, but they played Penn State tough. They just beat UCLA. Like, that's a capable team. Texas obviously goes to A&M. That is a very possible loss. Miami, I believe, goes to Syracuse, who's 8-3. There are losable games for teams ahead of Alabama and Ole Miss. Clemson plays South Carolina. And unfortunately for South Carolina, Alabama beat both, South Carolina lost to the SEC teams ahead of them in Alabama and Ole Miss. So I struggle to see how South Carolina jumps them, but these are just games this coming week where teams in front of Bama and LSU could lose. And at that point, does Alabama move up? Because you brought up Indiana earlier as disagreeing with SMU being ahead of them. And I'm not going to defend what the committee did, but my sort of explanation or rationality behind that would be they don't have a set criteria. They're just dropping teams that lose, just very similar to the AP poll, right? So SMU has not lost in a long time. Indiana just lost. They both have one loss. Indiana's behind them, right? So if a Clemson or a Miami or one of these teams that's ahead of Bama loses, it's like, oh, well, if Bama beats Auburn, like Bama just won, this team just lost. So I could see it happening. Again, not the biggest fan of it, but look, if you don't have a bunch of 10-2 teams across the country, then some team with 3 losses has to get in because that's just the way the cookie crumbles some years. And if you've got parity, then teams are going to catch losses.
Here's one crazy scenario where losing in a conference title game could matter, and that's if Texas A&M beats Texas, goes to the conference championship, and then loses to Georgia. In which case, they're likely going to get penalized because they'll
I would agree.
Texas probably gets in, and A&M will not get in.
No, they would not. But I my guess is to prevent that from happening, they are if Texas A&M beats Texas, they're not going to put A&M in the top 12 going into that game. They're going to leave them out so that if they lose, they don't have to be penalized, but they're still not in the top 12. I mean, we've seen it again. Right. We don't even have to get into what you think is right or wrong or who's deserving, but A&M has been the furthest, or the lowest ranked 2-loss SEC team the entire college football playoff, ranking since they started coming out at the beginning of the month. So we know what the committee thinks of them. My opinion is if they beat Texas, even, how good of a win that would be, the committee will not put them in that top 12. And if they lose to Georgia, they will, be left out, would be my guess. But again, maybe I'm wrong because the committee, in my opinion, doesn't really have much of a set criteria. I don't really know what to expect from them.
Well, and I think they would have a fair defense, taking my homer cap off. It's like you should have taken care of business at Auburn.
Yeah. Auburn, South Carolina. Yeah. I mean, again.
Put Notre Dame at home. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we've done enough about the college football playoff, I think, before we hop into the rivalry. I can't say that word. Rivalry week games. Did you want to touch on the overtime thing? I mean, I don't have much to say on it other than it's stupid. I wish it would change. I don't expect it to change, but college football games should not be decided by alternating 2-point conversions. I think
it's ridiculous. I think it's worth touching on for just a minute here to put our voice out there on it, because I was super frustrated with that. I knew what the overtime rules were going into it. I kind of forgot about them, and then it came back to my attention when they started doing the alternating 2-point conversions. By the way, they flip the field every time they do this. They're going to walk from one end to the other to do. I mean, the whole thing is just ridiculous. And to me, we took one of the best overtimes in all of sports. Everyone agreed it was the best overtime in all of sports.
Everyone's saying it.
Everyone was saying it. But it really was. I mean, it was fantastic. And only, a couple times did we ever get to like a 4 OT scenario. It's just improbable. Or the 7 OT, right? So took like the anomaly and made it the rule. And because we made it the rule, then we said, okay, well, we need to change the rule because it doesn't make sense, right? Maybe you could get a 7 overtime game where it's just that didn't happen. It was very, very rare that happened. So we took something that wasn't broke and we broke it. And now I think we need to go back. Like, why are we football is not soccer, right? And I don't even really like the PKs in soccer. I don't watch a whole lot of soccer, but it does kind of add some tension, and it can be fun. There have been times I've enjoyed it, but for football, it doesn't work that way, right? It's not these whole like alternating 2-point conversions. It doesn't do justice to the game. And it didn't do justice to the game that we saw on Saturday night against A&M and Auburn, 2 teams that were smash mouth going back and forth. And then you just get one play, to try to score. I get it. There can be 2-point conversions, right? You can go for 2, or maybe what we've done right in the past. I remember at one point, maybe there was, it would start, you have to go for 2, right? It's not, we just alternate 2-point. It's, you have to go for 2.
That starts in the second overtime now.
Okay. Well, great. That starts in the second overtime. Well, that just should continue. At some point, somebody's going to do what A&M did on Saturday and drop the ball. Right. So like, or you're going to get a stuff or something. It's ridiculous to me that these are our overtime rules and this is what we're working with, especially if we get into a playoff scenario, right? It would be a travesty to decide a game in a playoff scenario, which this almost kind of was a playoff scenario for A&M, right? I mean, for A&M, they had the playoffs on the line.
Yep.
Anyway, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that these are the overtime rules that we now play with in college football, and I think it should go back. We made the exception the rule, and by doing that, we broke it, and we should just go back to what it was because it was fantastic. It was beautiful. Everybody loved it. Everybody loved it.
Yeah, everybody did love it, and I agree. It's stupid. Alternating 2-point conversions it's a backyard middle school football style way to finish a college football game. I think it's dumb. So again, unfortunately, don't expect them to change it because of player safety, but we'll see. Whatever. Anyway, moving on. Rivalry week, Thanksgiving weekend. Everybody's playing their biggest rival, or one of their biggest rivals, I guess. But one of the best weekends of the year across college football, not just across the SEC. And of course, it's a jam-packed schedule. So we're only going to be able to touch on a few of these games real quick. The Egg Bowl is on Friday this year, so mark your calendars. I still thought it was going to be on Thanksgiving, but I guess it's on Friday. So not going to talk about that one. The spread is massive. Mississippi State is not good. Ole Miss should win unless they've totally given up. But even if they have, I think they should be fine there. Georgia Tech goes to Georgia Friday night. Another big spread game. I think Georgia should handle business. Georgia Tech's pesky, but let's not kid ourselves here. Tennessee goes to Vandy. Could be an interesting game. I think we're going to skip that one as well. So again, read our previews if you want to see our thoughts on all these games. We'll be posting that on the blog shortly. But could be interesting. But I think Tennessee, look, again, winning you're in. If they lose to Vanderbilt, then we've got a big emergency podcast-esque problem on our hands. But the game I wanted to talk to, or the first one I think we can actually get down into in breaking down on Saturday, is South Carolina at Clemson. Both teams kind of on the cusp of the playoff race. Definitely Clemson being right there at 12. It's in Death Valley. Clemson's a 2.5-point favorite. I don't really know what to think about this game. What are your thoughts? I mean, Clemson has looked good at times against not great competition. When they've played good competition, they have looked not so great. But they're favored here. So Vegas obviously thinks they are, better. Or at least better at home than South Carolina. Be about a pick 'em on a neutral. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Clemson's an enigma this year. They're tough to pin down. They started the year off. They get blown out by Georgia, and then they kind of they reel off a bunch of wins, and they look pretty good. By the middle of the year, I was like, okay, hey, Clemson might be back. Like they're really good. And then kind of a couple games here at the end of the year, they look pretty shaky. So I think this is a very winnable game for South Carolina. In fact, I think South Carolina is the better team if we're going to, just come around and say it. I just especially think that right now Lenora Sellers is on a roll, and it's going to be really hard to stop this kid. He just is playing the best football thus far of his career at South Carolina, and he's just stacking game after game after game where he's looking like a complete stud. So I think South Carolina has the advantage in this game. The fact that it is in Clemson hurts a little bit. So going away, going to Death Valley, that makes it a tough game for South Carolina. The one note to me here that I wanted to touch on is that Clemson has the 10th best rushing defense in the ACC. So if they've got the 10th best rushing defense in the ACC, where does that translate to in the SEC? Not very good, I'll tell you that. So South Carolina has the 4th best rushing offense in the SEC. So between Lenora Sellers, between Rocket Sanders, I expect South Carolina to have a pretty good day against Clemson in the running game. And I think Clemson's going to have a tough time stopping Lenora Sellers, just like everyone else has in the second half of this year. So it should be a great game, though. I don't expect this to be a blowout. I think it's, especially, like I said, in Death Valley, it's going to be a really good game. And the hate runs deep in this one. So rivalry game, throw it out.
I agree. I'm glad to see this game, back in, I won't say center stage, but back mattering, right? Because Clemson has just dominated them over the last decade, basically since Spurrier, left. Clemson has dominated them. And like you said, this is a very, very serious rivalry within that state. Both teams hate each other, programs hate each other. And so good on Shane Beamer for kind of butting his way back into the rivalry and making it matter again. So seeing this game, playing out with college football playoff, implications is fantastic. And that I agree with you. That's why I think it's going to be a close game. They're not going to let South Carolina come into their stadium and beat them easily. I think you're right in that South Carolina is the better team. I think, too, where South Carolina is going to make their hay is on defense. I think their defensive line is going to feast. I don't think Klubnik and his weapons are quite good enough, and I don't think the offensive line for Clemson is quite good enough. That's what worries me for them in this game. But at the same time, like you said, it's on the road in Death Valley, and Dabo is one of those guys that brought it up about Venables. We brought up about a bunch of things, but those guys play for him, and they will be ready for this game. He is not going to come into this game unprepared. He's not going to come into this game with his team not ready to play against South Carolina at home, a team that he prides himself on dominating. So I think they're going to be ready to play, and I think it's going to be a 4-quarter dogfight that could come down to just who makes a play late.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Awesome. I'll run through some more games. Louisville is going to Kentucky. is Mark Stoops dead, or can they rise up again? I don't think we're not going to go into hot seat. I don't think Mark Stoops is in danger of being fired, but this game would go a long way in earning him some kudos back with Kentucky fans. But don't need to break that one down. Kentucky's not even going to make a bowl game. So Iron Bowl, though, I think we should break this one down. Alabama hosting Auburn again. Obviously, a must-win for Alabama, must-win for Auburn if they would like to go to a bowl. I think they're sitting at 5-6 right now after the win over A&M. So potentially they could spoil two teams' seasons and make a bowl, which would be good for that team. They're pretty young, especially at some of the skill positions. So pretty big Iron Bowl. It's in Tuscaloosa. Bama's favored by 11.5, which seems high to me after what we just saw. I guess, that's why you look at the full sample size and not just a 1 week snapshot, but interesting game here. I don't know what to go. I don't know where to think, because I look at the spread and I think that's too high. Like I'm almost thinking that Auburn could go in there and win. And am I crazy? What do you think?
The spread seems high to me as well, especially just watching what we watched for Alabama against Oklahoma. I don't know. I mean, I just don't. It's like Jekyll and Hyde this year for Alabama. It's basically just been Hyde all year for Auburn, except for one game. But for Alabama, it's been Jekyll and Hyde. And so, which Alabama is going to show up? Is it going to be the Alabama that we saw against LSU that just blew them out of the water? Gave them a wedgie and pulled it over their head and walked out of the stadium, or is it going to be the Alabama that we saw show up against Vanderbilt, or the Alabama we saw show up against Oklahoma? I don't know. And it makes me kind of squeamish to make this pick, right? Because I just don't know which Jalen Milroe is going to show up. I don't know which Alabama is going to show up. Now, Auburn did give up a lot of yards. They did give up a lot of against A&M, right? They definitely got gashed on defense against A&M. So the plays are going to be there for Alabama. The other thing I think too, A&M wasn't able to do it as well against Auburn. I think Marcel Reed only had like 66 yards on the ground. That's still a decent amount. But I expect Jalen Milroe, I expect them to try to get him going in the running game. And I think he can get going in the running game in this one against Auburn. Auburn only gives up, I think it's like 110 yards a game on the ground rushing. But I feel like this is a game where they can get going. Alabama, I think that they do have more talent right now than Auburn does. And the fact that it's in Bryant-Denny and not in Jordan-Hare, I think matters a lot, right? Nick Saban said it last week, Jordan-Hare, that place is haunted, and it is. Aggies know well. We found out last week, again, that place is haunted. So the fact that it's at home this year, I think helps. And I also think the fact that it's a rivalry game, right? And just Alabama's going to be up for this one. They're hearing all the talk. There's a lot of talk coming from the Auburn Tigers right now. Online, they're saying stuff in the media that, one of their I think it was a linebacker or something said, we're going to go undefeated in my time. Freshman linebacker said 4 years undefeated against Alabama, basically, guarantee in. And Cole Kubelik said he would, put some NIL money on that if they could go 4 for 4 against Bama in his time on the Plains. So there's a lot of talk coming from Auburn, and I expect Alabama to shut them up. But I don't think it's going to be easy.
Yeah. Rick, Bonnie, thanks for joining in. Rick is a resident Tide fan listener. And he's doubting the Tide. So we'll give our picks, or actually I don't think I'm going to be able to make it to SEC After Dark tonight, but that's where our picks will be shown, as well as the rest of the crew. So we won't get into that specifically. In terms of this game, I think it kind of comes down to what it's come down to all year for Auburn. I think, Rick is right to doubt Alabama because they have been Jekyll and Hyde, but I agree with your point that this game being at home, I think they will play sharp. I think they will be ready. However, that does not just mean that they're going to steamroll Auburn, right? Auburn, if they play well and they're ready, which I think they will be, it's going to be a tight game, which is what I expect. And I think it just comes down to not only turnovers for Auburn, but turnovers for Bama, because in the games that they have lost, Jalen Milroe has turned the ball over. So if he can protect the ball, I like their chances. And then, again, we can beat this dead horse one more time, but Hugh Freeze also needs to give the ball to Jarquez Hunter for them to have a chance. If he does not give him the ball, I don't think they win. I mean, I'm looking at his statistics right now. He's only gotten 20 carries in 3 games all season, and they have won all 3. Auburn has won 5 games total. So I don't know what he's doing. I expect him to give him the ball 20-plus times. I don't know how you wouldn't at this point in the season. You have nothing to lose. He's an absolute tank in the backfield. So I think they'll feed him, and I think this will be a very, very tight competitive game.
Especially watching what Oklahoma just did to Alabama last week. Right?
Correct.
272 yards against Alabama, and all they did was throw the ball 11 times.
Yeah. And
beat Jarquez.
Right. And Deontay Lawson, the Alabama linebacker, is done for the year. Got hurt against Oklahoma last week. So they're down a linebacker. Run the ball. Run the ball, Peyton Thorne. That's what I would do. Jackson Arnold just ran for over 100. Peyton Thorne he's not Jalen Milroe, but he's capable. He's athletic. So run the ball.
Yeah.
Run the ball, Hugh.
Run some zone reads.
We'll see. We'll see if Hugh listens to us. I don't think he's a fan of our show based on some of the things we've said. So we'll see. We'll see if he at least respects what we have to say. All right, moving on. Arkansas goes to Missouri. Missouri's a 3.5-point favorite. Florida goes to Florida State, and Oklahoma goes to LSU. Just for time, we're going to skip those games again. Please read our thoughts on biscuitsandSEC.com for the previews because we got to get to the biggest game of the weekend, biggest game not of the year because A&M just lost to Auburn, but
biggest game in world history.
Yeah, biggest game definitely of our year as Aggies. So number 3 Texas at number 20 Texas A&M. Texas is 6.5-point, 5.5-point favorite, depending on what book you're looking at. I've seen a few different numbers out there, but fairly big favorites on the road in Kyle Field in what should be probably one of the most charged up atmospheres you can ever imagine, with this game not being played since 2011. All the bad blood between these schools only heightened with the move A&M to the SEC 13 years ago. Now Texas following. These programs, schools hate each other. We can vouch for it. As Aggies, we have a bunch of family members that are Texas Longhorns. So I'm thrilled this game is back. It's been missing for 13 years, and a real shame it hasn't been happening. So ecstatic that it's back. Man, I'm just excited to watch it. Frankly, I'm having a hard time even coming up with like words because of how jacked up I am in terms of like what I think could happen. But what is your early read on, the game, storylines, keys to the games? What are you thinking?
Well, like you said, when little brother decided to follow A&M to the SEC after all these years,
right,
we all knew that this was going to be a massive game and that the lid was probably going to blow off of Kyle Field. And I said that for a reason, because Texas has acted like little brother for a very long time after A&M left the Big 12, because they acted all high and mighty, and they always thought they controlled the Big 12, and we were sick of it. And so we left for the SEC. In my TV debut, I actually was interviewed by The Battalion. You can still go find it on YouTube somewhere. The Battalion is the student newspaper at A&M. I was at A&M, actually. I lived through this. I lived through the Johnny years. I was a sophomore when we were our last year in the Big 12, and then junior and senior for the last 2 years when we were in the SEC. And I remember vividly when we were trying to make the decision about whether or not to go. I'm glad that we made the decision to leave. I never thought we'd have to deal with Texas again, but now we're dealing with them, and it's fine. And I'm actually really glad that this game is back, because the hatred runs deep. Love all my family members who are Texas grads. We can have all the love after the game, but during the game and when we were growing up, this game on Thanksgiving Day or the day after, it was always hatred for those couple of hours. We'd be yelling at each other and yelling at the TV, and then we would get back to hanging out and having a good time together. So this game has been missing. The atmosphere in Kyle Field is going to be unbelievable. I was at that game in 2011 when Justin Tucker hit that field goal to beat the Aggies in 2011 and send us to the SEC with a loss.
After the fake ghost personal foul penalty, we will not forget.
No, we will never forget that.
The late hit out of bounds.
The refs have been screwing us forever. So
yeah, right.
This game, I mean, we could spend a whole hour just on this game and everything that's coming with it. Texas has not played in an environment like this all year. And they've been talking a big game on Twitter about, we come to Texas to play in big games. Whatever, right? That's true. You went into Alabama last year, you got a big win. Kids come to Texas to play in big games. Well, you haven't played in a big atmosphere all season. You got a cupcake, easy-ass schedule until you walk into Kyle Field. And Kyle Field is going to be a hornet's nest. That place is going to be ready to blow a top off from the minute people step into that stadium until the final whistle. So they haven't played in an environment like this. It's going to be absolutely crazy. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think there's two big things. One is for A&M, are they going to be able to get the offense going? This Texas defense is really freaking good.
Yeah.
They're that good. If A&M can't get anything going on offense at all, and they've had difficulty doing it, especially early, they cannot do what they have done in the past couple games. They cannot get down 21-0.
Yeah.
They can't do any of that crap. There's no coming back against this Texas team if Texas starts quick like that. So A&M has to make sure that they limit Texas early on and that they're able to stay in the game early. If they can keep it to like 10-7 after the first quarter or something, or after the first half, okay, we got a shot. Let's keep it rolling.
Right.
And then on the other side, for A&M on defense, I think that they have what it takes. I think that they can keep this Texas offense bottled up as much as they need to give them a chance to win. And I say that because, what did we just see them a couple games ago? Texas plays Arkansas and they beat them 20-10, right? Like the Texas offense at times has shown weaknesses in the turnover battle, right? Quinn Ewers, he can be turnover prone at times. And then at times as well, they're not clicking. In the last two games, they're only averaging 6-something yards per attempt through the air. So if A&M can hold them to doing that, right, it's like they've got a shot. So I think this was going to be a total dogfight to the end, really, because it's in Kyle Field.
I agree. I think Kyle Field is going to be as good of an atmosphere as you could possibly get in college football. I don't think Texas is going to handle that particularly well. I think that is going to give them trouble. We've seen Quinn Ewers struggle this year. He's just been very inconsistent. And I think I saw earlier today, I know he was dealing with some kind of an ankle injury. Word on the street is it's fine. I still wouldn't be shocked if we see Arch in this game, just kind of based on how Quinn's been playing, especially if he throws an early interception, which he has done quite commonly this season.
Yeah.
I just think what A&M needs to be able to do is get pressure on him, because that's how you mess him up. If he has time, he's capable of carving you up, especially the A&M defense that has been carved up now by Lenora Sellers, Garrett Nussmeier. You can throw on this A&M defense if you have time. So they're going to have to be able to get pressure on him and get home. The A&M defensive line, as of late especially, has struggled actually getting home and getting quarterbacks on the ground. Now, Quinn is not that athletic. He's not that shifty back there. He's decent, moving in the pocket, but he's not going to outrun somebody if they're bearing down on him. So
they're playing at Kyle Field, so maybe they'll finally get a freaking holding call.
Right. A&M has not got a holding call in the last 30 quarters, so we have to go back to week 4.
My homer's showing right now, but
go back to week 4, the last time anybody was called for a hold, which is a conversation for a different podcast, but is ridiculous nonetheless. This game, to me, though, as you said, I think the Kyle Field atmosphere is going to make a difference. I think Texas offense will struggle because I think A&M will have a good plan and they will know, kind of what to do to slow them down. They just have to, you just can't give up chunk plays. If you give up chunk plays, you're in trouble because Texas is good at getting them. They're very explosive. Their weapons are great. Isaiah Bond, they're fast on the outside. So just don't give up explosive plays. Make them earn it. Get them off schedule. They're not going to be able to run the ball very well, I don't think. They just that's not their game this year. So I think it's going to be kind of a low-scoring dogfight, and I think it could come down, cliche answer here, but to turnovers. If Quinn Ewers and Texas turn the ball over multiple times, A&M should be right in this game. If they take care of the ball and A&M, struggles, because you said it, Texas defense is great. So if A&M doesn't get some help with turnovers to get their offense going, I don't really see them getting, more than 20-ish points in this game. And I don't know if that's enough unless, again, they're forcing turnovers. So I think that's what it comes down to. But yeah, just can't wait for this game. And I'm really fascinated to see, Texas handle this environment because, like you said, they haven't been put to the test this year, and it's a shame that that they haven't been for everyone else. I think for them, it's fine. It's not their fault. It's the schedule they were dealt. They've got some lucky breaks with a team like Michigan that turned out not to be any good, but they've not been tested like this. I don't think they are built, like a team that is prepared to handle that, but that maybe they are. Maybe they prove me wrong, and Sark and those guys actually are ready. But I question that, and I think that's going to play a big role in the game.
I agree. I cannot wait for this one. I'm basically from here until Saturday at 7:30 Eastern. That's all I can think about.
Awesome. Well, that will do it for the Week 14 slate. Before we wrap up here, and we're doing great on time, so credit to us. It'll be a little bit overtime, but we're doing better than normal. Our final two segments, we do them each week. The Will Muschamp Coach of the Week and the Biscuit of the Week segment. So I'll take the Muschamp segment if you want to do the Biscuit one. So for those of you who are new here, this is actually a very prestigious honor to win the Will Muschamp Coach of the Week. We here at Biscuits and SEC love Coach Will Muschamp, the passion, enthusiasm, and intensity that he brought to the game. We miss him on the sidelines. So sometimes it's tongue-in-cheek. Sometimes it's actually, like Kirby saying we're dogs or whatever. We're going to eat. I'm hungry. You're hungry. Sometimes we actually just really love what happened. Sometimes it's kind of funny. This weekend, I think, would fall more in the funny category. So we had, I think we had two nominees this week. Eli Drinkwitz cussing at Mississippi State players and saying, "F you, if you don't quit talking, we're going to score," which is just, I mean, he's a nominee every week because he's always running his mouth at somebody. It's hilarious. Never change Drinkwitz. That guy's a lunatic in a good way. But we're going to go outside of the SEC for the winner, because for those of you who did not see the scene in Tempe, Arizona, after Arizona State beat BYU, or technically didn't beat them yet because they charged the field prematurely, as Arizona State was like trying to run around and throw the ball in the air to burn the timeout. And then the ref said there was 1 second left, which gave BYU a chance at a Hail Mary. It's complete madness, chaos.
Go watch
mayhem.
it on YouTube.
Yes.
Totally
watch the end of this game.
Unreal.
And to set the scene, so this happens. Arizona State fans storm the field. The referees go to review the play and decide there's 1 second left on the clock. And this is the Arizona State head coach, Kenny Dillingham, former Auburn OC, former Oregon OC. Seems like a fantastic coach and is doing a great job at Arizona State. This is him getting the news on the field, surrounded by reporters, his wife, drunk Arizona State students, that they are actually going to have to go back out on the field and play one more down because there's 1 second left. Yeah. So I think we even cut that a little early because when he actually gets the news, he drops several F-bombs. So we're going to keep this clean. It's a family-friendly program out there. But yeah, that was just a total madhouse. And I mean, him like pacing back and forth is perfect. I mean, he's got steam coming out of his ears. He's so mad about what's about to happen. They ended up winning the game. And shout out to Dillingham for saying, to dropping F-bombs left and right at the refs, getting in their face, surrounded by fans and reporters and his wife. Is just total ridiculous scene that only can happen in college football. Yeah,
congrats to Coach Dillingham on winning. Tis the season, so on winning the major award, the Muschamp Coach of the Week. I was watching this game live. It was absolute lunacy. I mean, it was just crazy. Nothing could explain it. It was a classic, college football. This is insane. This is why we love this sport type of moment. it took 20 minutes to get the ASU fans off of the field enough so that they could run this one last play, in which, by the way, BYU caught the ball. They threw a Hail Mary and they caught the ball at like the 3-yard line or something.
Just short.
They didn't score. They were short, but they caught the ball, on a Hail Mary attempt. So it was absolutely wild. Yes, you're right. I did cut the clip a little bit early because Dillingham drops an F-bomb and says he's screaming at the refs. Oh, that's BS, right? That's BS. You just got to laugh too at Taylor McGregor, the ESPN reporter, who's just there trying to get her final, interview, and she's being surrounded by all these drunk fans. Like, this is kind of a terrible scene. Like, I need to get the heck out of here. Just let me do my interview and leave. Dillingham, I think, later had to, or McGregor came out later and said that Dillingham was wonderful. He was great. Like, she wasn't afraid. They texted after the game. Like, he apologized. And I think somebody also was like questioning his wife, like how his wife felt. And he was like, oh, she knows who I am. Like, who cares? Like, shut up.
Heat of the moment. Bullets are flying out there.
That's right.
Again, we're honoring him here because he was bringing the heat. He was really, really jacked up on the field there, and rightfully so. So congratulations, Coach Dillingham. Up next, Biscuit of the Week. What do we have this week? I think it's going to be a good one.
All right, we've got a really solid one from Hurtado Barbecue, which is in Arlington, Texas. This was one Hammer found actually on Twitter, just trolling Twitter the other day. So check this one out. This is Hurtado Barbecue. Right there, you can see that one on the left is called the brisket. So they put their famous brisket on that bacon, egg, and cheese there. Looks like they put some bacon on it as well, on a beautifully homemade biscuit. And then you can see on the right there, that's their typical plate. I just wanted to include that because it looks ridiculously good.
Yep.
For those of you who aren't Texans, Texas Monthly does a top 50 barbecue spots in the state every year. And it's well known. And if you're on that list, you become a barbecue god, and you also become a place for a pilgrimage. Your barbecue shop immediately goes through the roof in terms of patronage, and it becomes a place for barbecue aficionados to pilgrimage to. So Hurtado is on that list this year. So as you can see from that plate, it absolutely should be. That plate of barbecue and ribs and sausage looks unbelievable. And it looks like every once in a while they do some breakfast as well with that brisket. And they also had some pretty big visitors this week that I wanted to show you guys. So Hurtado has started to get super famous. Check this out.
And action.
It's AJ.
And Big Justice.
And we're at Hurtado's Barbecue right here in Arlington, Texas. And this right here is the chopped brisket sandwich. We're going to try it and rank it on the boom meter, right, Big Justice?
Yeah, we are.
Let's go.
This is so good. Wow.
I think we know, right, Big Justice?
5 big
booms! Boom! 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 Boom!
How about that? 5 booms. Wow. Really good stuff. So good stuff from Hurtado. You sent that brisket over, and like the next day they posted AJ and Big Justice were at Hurtado Barbecue. So obviously it's gaining a lot of traction. Their food looks incredible. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting a brisket next time I'm up there in Arlington.
Yeah, that looked fantastic. And I guess, if it got 5 booms, what else is there to say? There's no arguing that. So we will end it on that note. Thanks to Big Justice and his dad or AJ or whatever his name is. So we'll call it a night on that. But y'all, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate everybody watching. Great weekend of football ahead. We'll be back next week, heading into the SEC title game. Please, again, for those of you watching us live, feel free to drop a like on the video, follow us on socials, subscribe to our newsletter. You can find all that information, here in the description of the video on our website. So thanks again for tuning in. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. I'm Hammer. That is Bossman signing out. Have a happy Thanksgiving and enjoy the weekend, y'all.